This is a machine that Byzantine emperors used to break foreign ambassadors before a single word of negotiation was spoken. Some historians call it the earliest documented example of medieval robotics, a throne that climbed toward the ceiling on its own, lions at its feet that roared and beat their tails against the floor, a gilded tree overhead, crowded with metal birds, each one singing in the voice of its own species. It stood in Constantinople, inside the great palace complex, for more than 100 years, and no engineer alive can tell you exactly how it worked. We know it existed because a man who disliked the place wrote it down. His name was Liutprand of Cremona, born around 920 in Pavia in northern Italy. In 949, Berengar II of Ivrea sent him east as a junior diplomat, and he walked into the Magnaura, the great reception hall beside the imperial palace, a short walk from Hagia Sophia. Liutprand was a sharp, sour writer who spent much of his later career complaining about Greeks. He had every reason to play down what he saw in that room. He didn't. He recorded it in his memoir, The Anti-Apodosis, a work that survives as one of the most vivid primary sources from the entire medieval period. In front of the emperor's throne, which Byzantine sources in the Book of Ceremonies call the Throne of Solomon, he wrote, stood a tree of gilded bronze, its branches full of birds made of the same gilded bronze, and every bird gave the cry that belonged to its kind. The throne was flanked by lions, either bronze or wood covered in gold, and they struck the ground with their tails and roared with open mouths and moving tongues. Then Liutprand was led forward on the shoulders of 2 attendants, and he went flat on the floor in the prostration the ceremony demanded. When he raised his head, the emperor was no longer at ground level. The throne had risen toward the roof, and the man sitting on it had changed his robes on the way up. Liutprand never explained how any of it was done, because he couldn't work it out. Here's the part that turns this from a curiosity into something stranger. The machines were on a schedule. Constantine VII, the Emperor Liutprand was standing in front of, is credited with the Book of Ceremonies, a manual that laid out imperial ritual in exact order. It records the moment the automata fired. As the official put the formal questions to the visiting envoy, the lions began to roar, the birds in the tree began to sing, and the beasts on the throne itself rose up. The roaring wasn't random. It was cued, like a lighting board in the theater. Time to land on the sentence where a foreign delegation was supposed to feel small. That tells you what this equipment was for. Nobody builds a machine on a cue sheet for their own amusement. Byzantium, in the 9th and 10th centuries, was fighting the Abbasid Caliphate on its eastern frontier, negotiating with Bulgars in the north, and managing a Latin West that barely understood it. The empire's real advantage was not manpower. It was the appearance of being something other kingdoms could never become. The throne room manufactured that appearance on demand. The mind behind it was Leo the Mathematician, born around 790 in Thessaly, a philosopher, astronomer, and engineer who is credited with the Automata in the Magnaura. He worked under the Emperor Theophilos, who reigned from 829 to 842, and who had an unusual appetite for machines. Leo was good enough that the competition tried to hire him. The caliph Al-Ma'mun in Baghdad invited him to come and teach. When Theophilos found out that his rival wanted this man, he refused to let him go and installed him in Constantinople, and that's the level we're talking about. A 9th century engineer treated as a strategic asset in a bidding war between 2 empires. The automata were not even Leo's most useful work. He also built a chain of signal beacons running roughly 450 miles from Cilicia on the empire's exposed southeastern border across Asia Minor to Constantinople. Stations on high ground passed fire signals down the line, and matched water clocks at key points kept the relay synchronized, so a specific coded meaning could travel with the flame. An Arab raiding force crossing the frontier could be known about in the capital in a matter of hours. That is a working optical telegraph, a functioning information network built more than 1,000 years before the electrical version, by the same man who made the lions roar. So how did the throne actually move? The technical documents are gone, and that's the honest answer. What survives is the tradition Leo was drawing on. Byzantium inherited the Greek mechanical writers, above all Hero of Alexandria, whose surviving treatises, the Pneumatica and the Automata, describe singing birds driven by air displaced through water, sounding pipes, siphons, valves, and figures, moved by falling weights and hidden chords. Everything in the Magnaura fits that toolkit. Air forced through narrow pipes will produce distinct bird calls if the pipes are cut to different lengths, which explains why each bird sounded like its own species. A weighted bellows and a set of tubes can produce a lion's roar, and a hidden linkage can swing a tail on the same release. The throne is the hardest piece, and the most likely answer is the least magical one. A counterweighted lift under the floor, worked by a windlass in a room below, would raise a heavy platform smoothly while the operators stayed out of sight. The robe change makes more sense too. Once you accept there were people down there and a screen the audience could not see past, rival courts noticed. In 917, a Byzantine embassy went to Baghdad, and the Abbasid palace put on a comparable show, including a hall the sources call the tree room, with a metal tree and mechanical birds of its own. Two of the most powerful states on Earth were competing in automated stagecraft, each trying to convince the other's diplomats that they were dealing with a civilization operating on a different level. This was an arms race in wonder, and both sides took it seriously enough to fund it, which brings us to how it ended, and the ending is very human. Michael III, son of Theophilos, the same emperor who had commissioned Leo's original work, took the throne in 842. At some point during his reign, the treasury ran short and the army needed paying, and the reports say Michael III had imperial metalwork melted down for coin, the automata included. The most sophisticated machines in Europe went into a furnace to cover a payroll. They were rebuilt because by the time Liutprand walked in a century later, they were running again, roaring on cue for Constantine VII. After Constantine's reign, the record goes quiet. No later ambassador describes the lions. No inventory lists the tree. There are no drawings, no components, no workshop, and no named successor who inherited the craft. A working system that had impressed the ambassadors of two empires simply stops appearing in the sources, and the knowledge behind it goes with it. That is the real loss here, and it is a pattern that repeats across the ancient world. The technology was never a secret formula. It was a living skill held by a small number of people, funded by a state that wanted it, maintained by workshops that trained the next generation. Cut the funding, break the chain of apprenticeship, and within 2 generations, nobody remembers how to build the thing. It doesn't need a fire or an invasion. Indifference is enough. So when people say the ancient world had no robots, they're not exactly wrong about the science, and they're completely wrong about the effect. A 9th century engineer with pipes, weights, water, and hidden cords built a room that could make a hardened diplomat lose his composure and admit in writing that he had no idea what he just witnessed. There was no electricity, no motor, and no computer anywhere in it. There was only a man who understood air, gravity, and timing well enough to turn them into an instrument of the state. The lions are gone. The tree is gone. The throne of Solomon is gone. What Liutprand left us in the Antipodosis is the only proof they ever ran, and one sentence of it still lands. He looked at the most advanced machine in Europe, and the only thing he could report with confidence was that it had beaten him.